This might be one of the rarest photos of anyone on the internet. A large Sentinelese community walking along the beach, just barely visible above the lapping waves. The Sentinelese are one of the most isolated people on the entire planet, if not the most isolated people. Their contact is limited to extremely sporadic visits by Indian research teams and the occasional eccentric, most recently in 2018 by an American missionary named John Allen Chow. To put it mildly, that visit did not end well for John.
Authorities say the 26-year-old was killed, possibly by bow and arrow, on what police described as a misplaced adventure in a highly restricted area.
This photo apparently comes from a team trying to recover John's body. Over the last 150 years, the Sentinelese have been extremely reclusive, resisting almost all attempts at contact, sometimes violently. But I wanted to get behind the headlines and the drama and all of these things, and maybe try and understand what we can actually say for sure about these people, their home, and, maybe why they're so hostile to outsiders. I mean, they're people after all, right? We must be able to empathize with them. Yeah, let's dig into it. First, I wanted to understand a little bit about their home. This is North Sentinel Island right here. It's in the Andaman Island chain, about 36 kilometers away from South Andaman. This island chain is about 300 kilometers from the coast of Myanmar and about 1,300 kilometers from the coast of India. Apparently, it was formed some 50 million years ago when the India plate crashed into Asia. You can kind of see the ridge of rock that it sits on. The Sentinelese, I suppose, are kind of living on top of a giant underwater mountain. There are absolutely no natural harbors. No actual harbors at all. The island is completely surrounded by coral reefs. Apparently the seas in this region can be quite rough. The monsoons and high winds can make this a choppy place to be sailing, that's for sure. Which might explain why the Sentinelese, even though they can make rafts and boats and things, they don't seem to venture out to ever meet us, really. The shore is lined with mangroves, and inland, trees like cotton tree grow extensively. As for the animals on the island, we're not 100% sure because no detailed survey has ever been done, but certainly coconut crabs, wild pigs, maybe some birds like the Andaman serpent eagle, which looks absolutely stunning. What a great looking bird. What a fit bird. Of course, the people have the coral reefs to fish in and gather from. Turtles are for sure on the menu. When you pull up the island on Google Earth, there really are no distinctive features at all. It's totally forested. There's only one thing which might be a clearing, but people on Reddit argue it's a rock. Is it a rock? Is it a clearing? I do not know. There's a shipwreck in the northwest of the island from a wreck called the Primrose, which ran aground, I believe, in the 70s. But other than that, the only signs of life really are these sort of paths which you can see along the coast. No doubt worn into the island over millennia by the Sentinelese. The island is about 59 square kilometers, which puts it about the same size as Manhattan Island, but significantly less people. We don't know how many people live there. We don't know how many Sentinelese there are at all. It could be 50, it could be 150. The population estimates are just based off visits to the island, pictures of the community, and, a rough extrapolation about how many people this island could possibly support. For sure, though, it's a small community. For sure, a small community. And this could honestly be the first possible reason for hostility. Realistically, Sentinel Island, North Sentinel Island, it can probably only support one community. And they're the community that are already there. They may have had a hostility to outsiders for thousands of years based off that simple fact. Who knows how many times people in the past, before European contact, before contact with the outside world, how many other groups from the Andaman Islands maybe tried to make their home there. Remember, for them, there is no shop to go to. There is no shop. All their food has to come 100% from the island. If there's not enough food, they starve to death. It's as simple as that. It's not illogical under those circumstances that they would want to really protect their island home. I don't think that's crazy at all. However many Sentinelese there are, I really wanted to know one thing. This is obviously archaeology channel, prehistory channel, I really wanted to know how long they'd lived there. How can we possibly even answer that question if we can't chat to them or do any archaeology there? Obviously, there has never been an archaeological survey done on North Sentinel Island, and even on the rest of the Andaman Islands, I think the amount of work that's been done is pretty limited, to be honest. But we can peer into the deep past of these people, into the deep past of this population, thanks to the DNA of their neighbors, right? The Ongi, the Jarawa, the Great Andamanese, the people who inhabit the other Andaman Islands. Based on some early genetic work, it was initially believed that the people of the Andaman Islands had been in place for some 65,000 years. Basically, since out of Africa, like humans left Africa, got to the Andaman Islands, and that was it. No other movement or migration for 65,000 years. That would be remarkable. That would be truly remarkable. But recent studies with a little bit more information, a little bit more knowledge have seriously challenged that. A lot of these studies are based on mitochondrial DNA. That's only passed down on the maternal line. Mitochondrial haplogroups M31A and M32, I believe, are exclusive to the Andaman people. And seemingly, they split off from their relatives at absolute maximum, 26,000 years ago. And for anyone that knows anything about sort of deep history, that's a really interesting number. So for those that don't know, 26,000 years ago was basically the height of the last ice age. It was really close to this time we call the last glacial maximum. The highest, amount of water being locked up in the ice sheets, and the world looked really different. The sea level was really different. It was about 130 meters less than it is today. I've got this website here, floodmap.net. And we should be able to see what the sea level looked like around that time. Let's set this at minus 130. Set. Yeah, here we go. This is what the Ice Age looked like. You can see Britain and Ireland here fully trapped in Doggerland. Australia and Papua New Guinea in Sahul. Sundaland here in Asia. Beringia. I can't quite see Beringia on this map because it can't scroll sort of infinitely. But Beringia's there too. America's joined to Asia. Let's zoom in on the Andamans. Okay, wow, yeah. You can see North Sentinel Island there, part of one huge Andaman Island. No island chain anymore, just one giant island. There does still seem to be some small gap of coastline between the island and Asia, but not by a lot. Can I measure a distance on this thing? Apparently, according to this measurement, just 33 kilometers from the coastline of Asia. So, yeah. It wouldn't surprise me if people arrived in the Andaman Islands around that time. Wouldn't surprise me at all. Interestingly, I read in the early accounts by the British, the Andamanese seem to have legends about rising sea level and water rising up to the level of old middens, which at one point in time were at the top of mountains. Is that a reference to the fact that they arrived here during the Ice Age and then the sea rose up around them? I don't know. Sometimes I don't know what to think about these old stories. There's certainly been a lot of tsunamis in 26,000 years, right? So it's impossible to say for sure, but could be. With DNA and everything like that, it's kind of dystopian with genetics, what we can learn about the Sentinelese, even if we can never visit them and chat to them and understand their history. We can learn so much about them just because our understanding is so great now with DNA. It's kind of crazy. Imagine trying to explain any of this to them. I think one of the main reasons why people are interested in the Sentinelese is because we can't help but be fascinated by people who are just not living in the modern world with all its problems, all its annoyances. Do you know what I mean? One constant problem is invasion of privacy. Happens all the time, which is why this video is sponsored by Incogni. Scams and identity theft all start with your information being exposed online. Address, phone number, social security, all of this is bought and traded by data brokers. This is where Incogni comes in. They track down and remove your information from hundreds of known brokers. The process is fully automated. I've been using them since May 2023, and they've completed 784 takedowns in that time. Pretty crazy. You can use their custom removal feature to request the information being taken down from almost any website that isn't in the automated process. All of this helps keep me safe online, and it just gives me a huge peace of mind, honestly. Huge peace of mind. I really don't want anyone turning up at my house or taking out a loan or anything, But they can't harm you if they can't find you. To get started with Incogni, just sign up, give them permission to work on your behalf, and sit back and relax. That's it. Incogni is also risk-free. You can get a refund if you're not happy within 30 days. Take back your personal data with Incogni. Use code Milo and get 60% off your annual plan. Link down below. Thank you, Incogni.
Welcome to Xanadu, Marco Polo.
The first record of the Andaman Islands, at least as far as Europe goes, comes from Marco Polo, the explorer who famously went to China in the 13th century. He describes the people of the Andaman Islands as the most brutish and savage race, having heads, eyes, and teeth resembling those of the canine species. You can actually see it here in this medieval manuscript, the big dog heads, big white castle. For sure they had never been to the Andaman Islands, for sure not. They also said that if anyone ever got shipwrecked there on the island, not a single man would escape uneaten or unskinned. But just to add, ever since European contact in the 18th century, we don't actually have any records of cannibalism from the Andaman Islands. But who knows? The first attempt at sustained contact would happen 500 years after Marco Polo, though. By the late 19th century, the Andaman Islands had become a British penal colony administered by a chap called Maurice Vidal Portman. Like a lot of figures from the time, it's a bit tricky to reflect on his actions. On the one hand, we know so much about the Andamanese because of the fact he actually cared to write records about them. On the other hand, obviously massively instrumental in their subjugation. It's always funny when you use a source like that. Portman made the first proper attempts at contact with the Sentinelese and maybe even set them on this path of conflict with the modern world. In January 1880, he landed on North Sentinel Island intending to make contact with the people. The Sentinelese disappeared into the forest. Even after days of combing the island, they couldn't find a single person. This is a common occurrence with people who visit North Sentinel Island. Their ability to just disappear into the jungle is truly incredible. Eventually, though, Portman and the crew stumbled across an elderly couple and some children. He took the elderly couple and 4 children back to Port Blair on South Andaman. We have no idea how long they were kept there, how they were treated when they kept there, or what their reaction was to being kidnapped. But we do know the elderly couple died of disease, and the children were released back with gifts, never to be seen again. On that first voyage to North Sentinel Island, he also potentially made the mistake of bringing along people belonging to the Great Andamanese tribe, who may well be the traditional enemy of the Jarowa and the Sentinelese. So if you think about it from their perspective for a minute, these people show up on the island, strange people, strange boats, white people, first time they've ever probably seen white people. And what do? They rock up with your traditional enemies, kidnap a family, and your granny and granddad never to be seen again. Not exactly off to a great start. I think that's fair to say. That's not exactly off to a great start. There are a few people who've been inside a Sentinelese village, very, very few, but perhaps the most knowledgeable is certainly Triloknath Pandit. He's an Indian anthropologist. Between 1967 and 1983, I think, he made at least 9 or 10 trips to the island. I'm not exactly sure on the exact number. It might even be more. This is him from footage in 1974, I think. He wrote about his brief experiences with the tribe in this 1990 book. At least 18 lean-to type huts, all actually in use on the day, as fires were lighted in all of them. If the average member of each hut, the size of a nuclear family, was 3 or 4, the population of a camp could safely be estimated as 50 to 70. Whether this is the entire population of the island, or there are other camps elsewhere, we have no idea. We have no idea. From exploring the village, though, we can get a sense of what they were eating. Turtles and their eggs, honey, a plant called pandanus. If they're anything like their neighbors, edible insects are on the menu. And crucially, wild pigs, extremely significant. They're hunter-gatherers in the truest sense on their own island. They have to hunt and gather absolutely everything. The tools they have are simple baskets, bows with long arrows that double as spears, adzes, harpoons, and maybe it's here we find another reason for hostility. Of course, these objects were taken without permission of the Sentinelese. They completely disappeared into the forest. The police accompanying the anthropologists on this voyage basically just took whatever they wanted. The whole atmosphere was that of conquering hordes overrunning a conquered territory. Again, relations not off to a great start, right? Not great, not great. One really interesting thing, though, is that in one of the huts, there was a pig skull painted red with ochre. Presumably a trophy of a recent hunt. Their neighbors on Little Andaman Island, the Ongi tribe, also do something similar. After a successful hunt, the women of the tribe paint a skull red. So maybe there's a chance we can learn something about the Andamanese from looking at their neighbors. There's got to be a chance, right? It's really risky trying to draw conclusions comparing the Sentinelese to their neighbors. It's really, really risky. Several times, Ongi tribe members have been brought on expeditions in the hopes of being able to communicate with the Sentinelese. Unfortunately, it seems they genuinely just don't understand each other. Portman took them in the 19th century, they didn't understand each other, and in the 20th century, when Indian anthropologists took them, they didn't understand each other. They've probably been isolated from each other for thousands of years. Now, it could be that members of the Jarawa tribe could understand them, but at the time of recording, as far as I'm aware, none of them have ever been brought on an expedition to North Sentinel Island. Nevertheless, right, the Ongi and the Sentinelese, they lead a similar life. They're both hunter-gatherers living on small islands right next to each other. They both occasionally get things from the outside world. How do they view this? So, I've been reading this book, In the Forest, by Vishvajit Pandya. And there's one part that's absolutely fascinating to me. Absolutely fascinating because it really gets into the worldview of the Ongi. They have this idea about cutting and binding. Cutting, gite kabe, is associated with metal, lohaye, and of course the outsiders that bring it. In their eyes, it's kind of chaotic because cutting brings death and blood and smell. Binding, ulok wobe, establishes order by joining things. And these are sort of the two activities that the hunter-gatherers participate in. They're either cutting or they're binding. That's sort of how they're viewing their world, if I understood the source correctly. It would be easy to think of like cutting as bad and binding as good, but that's probably a simplification. It's almost like a yin and yang kind of thing. Maybe one does release death, but it's also 100% necessary for life, right? So we can't fall into that simplistic trap. This philosophy, this worldview is, of course, heavily influenced by contact with the outsiders, with the outside world. You would think that these hunter-gatherers live in the Stone Age, but they don't. They, of course, have access to metal through contact with us and have maybe had access to metal for centuries upon centuries through contact with traders sailing across the Indian Ocean. The Sentinelese are the same way. You would think they're in the Stone Age, but they're not. They have metal. But, of course, they are aware that metal comes from the outside, where all these other strange people are from. So again, you're thinking like, how do they view metal, right? How do they view metal? How do they view us? How does this affect their worldview? It's entirely possible that the Sentinelese have similar views to the Ongi about these sort of things, or at least contact with us has impacted their worldview in some significant way, like it has for the Ongi. I mean, imagine you're a Sentinelese person and you're exploring a shipwreck, right? Metal is this absolutely precious resource, and now this enormous piece of metal is washed up on your island, full of things you can't even wrap your head around. I'm quoting from North 02 here, but really, it would be like us stumbling across a spaceship. How did this moment affect how they view the world? What did they even think all the stuff in the ship was? Speaking of philosophy, the Jarawa have a concept of Ang, which is us, and Enen, outsiders. And that's how they sort of divide all the people in the world. There is us and there is everyone else. Again, could the Sentinelese have a similar experience? You know, imagine how insular their community is on that small island. Maybe it's just 100-odd people. Everyone knows everyone. I think it's probably quite a safe guess that they have a similar worldview. They have the Sentinelese, the Sentinels themselves, and they have everyone else. We are the Enen that bring chaos, but also the odd cool thing, and metal, which is useful. Check this out. This is footage from a 1974 visit. This dancing man here just shot one of the crew members through the leg with an arrow. And he's clearly so proud of himself. He's proud of the fact that he defended his territory, his people, against outsiders. He defended them against the Enen. It's like, hostility doesn't have to be entirely driven by the bad actions of European and visitors, right? Their entire world philosophy might view everyone as outsiders. In these trips with the Ongi, though, I did learn one really fascinating thing. We have actually chatted to and interacted with and understood a Sentinelese person. a chap called Dawacho Chigale Bai. In one of his visits to the Sentinelese, Vidal Portman learned of an Ongi man who lived on the Sink Island. Sink Island is about 50 kilometers from North Sentinel Island. This chap called Dawacho Chigale Bai, hope I'm saying that correctly, he's long dead, but I hope I am, who apparently, as a young man, maybe a teenager, he sailed from North Sentinel Island and landed on the Sink Island. Whether this was a deliberate attempt to start a new life, or, he just got blown away fishing for turtles. I don't know. We have no idea. But this Sentinelese person from then on lived with the Ongi, learned their language, and Portman brought him on a visit to North Sentinel Island. They searched the island for 2 whole days, didn't run into a single person before they saw some Sentinelese fishing in a canoe off the northwestern edge. And this is the really interesting thing. This is so interesting to me, this detail. This Dawacho chap, he called to them in their own language. Maybe he even called to them by their specific names. And they made no positive sign. They made no positive sign at all. They made no effort to make contact. Even when they were communicated with in their own language, presumably by someone they knew, presumably by someone they grew up with. Isn't that fascinating? It really makes me think that they might have a true, genuine fear of contact with the outside world. A really genuine fear. You can kind of get a sense of that from later visits by teams of Indian scientists. In one instance, they brought a doll and 2 pigs, alongside all the other goods that they typically bring, like coconuts and metal pans and things like that. One pig disappeared into the forest, so its fate is not known. But the pig that remained on the beach was immediately speared and buried by one of the Sentinelese. Even though it's a major factor in their diet, they didn't want anything to do with a pig that was brought to them. Likewise, the doll, after everything had been gathered and everything they wanted collected, the doll was left alone. That one I kind of more understand because it kind of seems a bit shamanic. This little tiny inanimate human that they brought with them. No thank you. But the pig is strange, and not responding to someone in their own language is very strange. You can't help but think they're afraid of some kind of magic or contamination or something like that. Some genuine fear is motivating their actions.
They are a very lively people who prefer to live in isolation, away from the mainstream of life.
Despite the list of reasons, right, that the Sentinelese might not trust the outside world, whether that's through our actions or their philosophies, their worldviews, just their history of surviving on such a small island, whatever the reason, right? Whatever the reason. In the 1990s, friendly contact was made. Multiple times friendly contact was made. You can see clips of one of the moments here. People coming to the boats, getting gifts. Even a bit of laughter when one of them gets hit on the head by a thrown coconut. They're people, right? They're people. They live, laugh, love. God, why did I say that? But they do, though. They do. So, with that in mind, should we continue contact with them? Right? It's easy to be down on the modern world with all its problems and everything like that, but, do the Sentinelese not want painkillers? Do they not want medicine? Do they not want to understand the world around them and participate in this great human journey as part of a united human family? Do they not want any of these things? In reality, probably none of that will happen. At the start of British control of the Andaman Islands, there was estimated to be 5,000 Great Andamanese. Just a few years after the end of British rule in 1951, there were 23 from a population of 5,000. Small tribes, these tiny groups, these tiny communities, they're still under threat today. Who could honestly say they're not? Exploitation, drugs, alcohol, the shock of your entire worldview, collapsing it kind of destroys these communities, guys. It kind of destroys these communities, and I think it would be no different for the people of North Sentinel Island. Even me. I'm a part of this problem. I can't resist making a video about them. I'm so interested by them. But if this video does well, does it mean like another YouTuber's going to try and rock up on their island? Maybe. Maybe. Even people like myself who claim to care perhaps can't help but contribute to damaging them. Maybe we could provide the Sentinelese with things like vaccines and painkillers and a written alphabet and the benefits of the modern scientific world, but at what cost, right? At what cost? The destruction of their entire community? Would you take that? Would you take that exchange? I don't think so. I don't think you would. I don't think I would. Realistically, on their island, they're living how the majority of humans have lived throughout human history, no different to anyone else. They're free to pursue the life that they lead, trade all that to be bossed around by us. Best case scenario, they're writing emails all day for a company they don't even own. Nah. I think we gotta leave them alone. We gotta leave them alone. Yeah. Would love to chat to them though. Would love to.